The first time it happened, it was not planned. His hands were on my waist, his lips brushing against mine, and in that stolen moment I knew I was crossing a line I could never return from. The taste of betrayal was as intoxicating as it was poisonous. My husband's best friend was pressed against me, and I was drowning in a fire I should have run from. The room was filled with heat, silence, and guilt, but I did not stop him. I did not stop myself. Before I take you deeper into this story, I want to pause and say thank you. To all of you who have subscribed to this channel, you are the reason I can share these raw, intense, and emotional stories. A big thank you as well to all the new and returning viewers who are yet to subscribe. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, because it truly serves as the fuel and energy that keeps powering this channel. Please, do not just watch. Share your thoughts in the comments right after this hook. Your voices keep this space alive. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Rachel. I am an American white woman in my early 30s. I live in the suburbs of Texas with my husband, Mark. We have been married for 7 years. Mark is steady, reliable, and kind. He works as a construction manager, the type of man who comes home tired but always makes time to ask me about my day. He loves me in ways I never believed I deserved. Then there is Jason, Mark's best friend since college. Jason has been part of our lives since the beginning. He is tall, confident, and magnetic in a way that makes people gravitate toward him. Unlike my husband, Jason thrives on charm and danger. He has been at every barbecue, every birthday party, every gathering. To Mark, he is like a brother. To me, well, that is where this story gets dark. It started out harmless. Jason and I would laugh at the same jokes, exchange glances when Mark said something predictable, or share a glass of wine too many during gatherings. There was an energy between us, one I ignored for years. At least, I thought I ignored it. One evening, Mark invited Jason over to watch a football game. The house smelled of pizza and beer, and the two of them were loud with excitement. I had no real interest in the game, so I busied myself in the kitchen, pretending to clean but secretly watching the way Jason leaned back on the couch, his eyes flickering toward me more than once. At halftime, Mark stepped outside to take a call. Jason followed me into the kitchen. I told myself it was innocent, but the way he stood too close, the way his arm brushed against mine when he reached for a glass, told me otherwise. "Rachel," he said in a low voice, "you know you drive me crazy, right?" My stomach dropped. I should have laughed it off, told him to stop. Instead, I froze. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. If Mark was not my best friend. That sentence never finished. Because I turned, and in one impulsive moment, our lips met. It was not soft. It was desperate. A kiss filled with years of unspoken tension. I pulled away, but Jason grabbed my wrist. His eyes locked on mine, burning with something I should have feared. I knew I should end it, but instead I let him kiss me again. This time longer. Harder. By the time Mark came back inside, Jason was seated casually on the couch again, as if nothing had happened. My heart was racing so violently I thought it would betray me before my lips ever did. From that night on, everything shifted. Jason started texting me late at night. Harmless at first, jokes, memes, casual questions. Then, bolder. Compliments about how I looked. Suggestions that we meet when Mark was busy. At first, I resisted. I told myself it was wrong. I told myself I loved my husband. But the thrill was like a drug. I kept going back. One afternoon, I told Mark I was going shopping. Instead, I drove to Jason's apartment. He opened the door shirtless, a knowing smirk on his face. I stepped inside, my pulse thundering in my ears. The air between us was electric. He pressed me against the wall, his hands everywhere, his lips devouring mine. I did not think of Mark in that moment. I did not think of my marriage, my vows, or the life I had built. I thought only of the fire consuming me. When it was over, I lay in Jason's bed staring at the ceiling, guilt clawing at me while his arm draped lazily across my body. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But when he kissed my shoulder and whispered, "You are mine now," I felt a shiver of both dread and desire. That night, I returned home to Mark. He smiled when I walked through the door, kissed my forehead, and asked how shopping went. I lied. I told him I found nothing I liked. He believed me without hesitation. That was the moment I realized just how far I had fallen. My husband was looking at me with trust in his eyes, while I carried the weight of betrayal in my chest. Jason was not just a mistake. He was becoming an addiction. And I knew deep down, addictions always come with consequences. The first time with Jason should have been the end. I told myself I would never let it happen again, that I would bury it in silence and live my life as if nothing had changed. But temptation does not disappear when you feed it. It only grows hungrier. Days after our first night together, Jason sent me a text that chilled me and thrilled me all at once. "You cannot pretend you do not want me again." I deleted it, but my fingers trembled. My heart pounded as if it wanted to confess before my lips ever could. Mark was in the living room, humming along to a commercial on TV. His trust was so blinding, it made my secret even heavier. That week, Jason found excuses to see me. He came by the house when Mark was working late. He offered to help me carry groceries. He even pretended he had borrowed tools that he needed to return. Each visit came with lingering touches, long looks, and the kind of silence that felt louder than any words. One afternoon, it happened again. Mark had gone to a worksite 3 towns over. Jason came by with a bottle of wine, smirking as if the whole world belonged to him. I told him to leave. I told him it was dangerous. He set the bottle on the counter, pulled me close, and kissed me before I could speak another word. And I let him. That day stretched into hours of betrayal. In my husband's home. In the bed where Mark and I had slept side by side for years. When it was over, I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the wedding picture hanging on the wall. My dress, my smile, my husband's eyes filled with love. Jason kissed my neck and laughed softly, saying, "If only he knew." That laugh haunted me. I began living 2 lives. With Mark, I was the devoted wife. I cooked dinner, kissed him goodnight, listened to his stories about construction sites and deadlines. With Jason, I was reckless and raw, surrendering to a side of myself I had buried for years. Each time I told myself it was the last. Each time I found myself answering his calls, sneaking into his apartment, or letting him into mine. The lies multiplied. I am meeting a friend for coffee. I have errands to run. I need some time alone. Mark believed them all. He trusted me because he had never been given a reason not to. That trust cut me deeper than Jason's touch ever could. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating, but it came with paranoia. I jumped every time Mark picked up my phone. I panicked when Jason texted too late at night. I erased messages, cleared call logs, and deleted pictures. I became an actress in my own marriage, smiling on the outside while guilt rotted me inside. But Jason did not care about guilt. He cared about control. One night, as we lay tangled in his sheets, he said, "You are mine, Rachel. You know that, right?" I turned away, trying to hide the fear that crept into my chest. "I am married to Mark," I whispered. Jason's laugh was low and sharp. "You are married to him, but you belong to me." It was then I realized this was no longer just an affair. It was a trap. Jason knew the power he had. He knew I would not confess, and he used that silence as his weapon. The danger of being caught grew sharper. At a neighborhood barbecue, Mark grilled burgers while Jason sat across the yard. Our eyes met. It was only for a second, but in that second, my body remembered every secret touch, every forbidden kiss. I quickly looked away, forcing laughter at something a neighbor said. But when I glanced back, Jason was smirking, sipping his beer as if daring me to expose us. Later that night, Mark wrapped his arms around me in bed. You are quiet, he said softly. Everything all right? My throat tightened. I kissed him and whispered, I am fine. But I was not fine. I was drowning in a lie that was swallowing me whole. The cracks began to show. One afternoon, I came home late from Jason's place. My hair was messy, my blouse wrinkled. Mark was waiting in the kitchen. His eyes narrowed slightly as he asked, Where were you? My heart raced. Shopping, I said quickly. He frowned. You did not buy anything? I forced a smile. Nothing worth the money. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me a moment longer. In that silence, I felt the first stirrings of suspicion. From then on, I noticed Mark watching me differently. He asked more questions. He paid attention to the way I dressed, the way I left the house, the way I answered my phone. He was not accusing me, but he was observing me. And that terrified me more than any confrontation. Jason, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy the risk. He whispered in my ear when Mark was in the next room. He brushed his fingers against mine at family gatherings. He took every opportunity to remind me that he was there, hidden in plain sight. I started to hate him as much as I wanted him. The double life became unbearable. Every kiss with Mark felt like a lie. Every touch with Jason felt like a crime. I was living on the edge of discovery, and the edge was crumbling beneath me. One night, lying awake beside Mark, I realized something chilling. If the truth ever came out, I would lose everything. My husband. My marriage. My home. And the worst part was, Jason would not catch me if I fell. Because Jason was not in love with me. Jason was in love with the thrill of betrayal. And sooner or later, thrills always end in disaster. Secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully you bury them. I had been living in a storm of lies, and deep down, I knew the thunder was coming. What I did not expect was how violently it would strike. It happened on a Friday night. Mark came home earlier than usual. I had just returned from Jason's apartment, my hair freshly combed, my perfume reapplied, trying to erase the evidence of where I had been. I thought I had succeeded. I thought I still had time. But Mark's eyes told me otherwise. He stood in the doorway, silent, his face pale, his jaw clenched. In his hand was my phone. I had left it charging in the kitchen, carelessly unlocked. Jason had texted me while I was gone. Last night was unforgettable. I need you again tomorrow. The words burned from the screen, louder than any confession I could have made. Rachel, Mark said, his voice low but trembling. What is this? My throat tightened. My knees weakened. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Tell me it is not true, he demanded, his voice rising, pain leaking into every word. Tears blurred my vision. I shook my head, not in denial, but in sheer panic. Mark. Do not lie to me. His shout shook the walls. He slammed the phone on the table, his hands gripping the edge as if to steady himself. It is Jason, is it not? The silence was louder than my words could ever be. I could not deny it. My tears betrayed me before I spoke. Mark staggered back, as if my betrayal had physically struck him. His chest heaved, his eyes bloodshot. My best friend, he whispered, almost to himself. The man I trusted. The man I called my brother. And you, my wife. He covered his face with his hands, and for the first time in our marriage, I watched my husband break. He cried openly, not out of weakness, but out of devastation. I reached for him, but he pulled away as if my touch burned. Do not, he said sharply. Do not touch me. You are not the woman I married. I do not know who you are anymore. His words cut deeper than any blade. That night unraveled in screams, sobs, and broken trust. I confessed, because denial was pointless. I told him everything, or at least enough. Jason's name was spit like venom from his lips. He paced the room like a caged animal, torn between rage and heartbreak. I let him into our home, Mark shouted. I let him into our lives. And you let him into our bed. There was no forgiveness in his voice. Only fury. Only disgust. By midnight, he told me to leave. Pack your things, he said coldly. You are not staying under this roof another night. I begged. I cried on the floor like a child. I promised change, I swore it was over, I pleaded for another chance. But Mark's face was made of stone. The man who once loved me beyond reason now looked at me as if I were a stranger, a disease he needed to cut out of his life. When I refused to move, he gathered my suitcase himself, throwing my clothes into it with shaking hands. He carried it to the front door and dropped it there with finality. You made your choice, Rachel, he said quietly, his voice broken but firm. Now live with it. But you will not live here. And then he opened the door. I stepped into the night with my suitcase, my tears, and the crushing weight of what I had done. The sound of the door slamming behind me echoed in my chest like a verdict. Jason was not there waiting for me. He never was. When I called him, desperate and broken, he answered with a sigh. Rachel, you cannot stay here, he said coldly. Mark is my best friend. You know this has gone too far. Too far. The words sliced through me. He had been the fire that consumed me, and now he acted as if I was nothing but ash. He hung up before I could reply. In that moment, the truth burned brighter than ever. Jason had never loved me. He had loved the thrill, the secrecy, the forbidden taste of betrayal. Now that the secret was out, I was worthless to him. I lost my husband. I lost my home. I lost the very man I betrayed Mark for. All I had left was regret. The days that followed were hollow. I stayed in a cheap motel on the edge of town, staring at peeling wallpaper and empty bottles. My phone stayed silent. No calls from Mark. No texts from Jason. My world, once filled with love and stability, had collapsed because of my own choices. Sometimes, late at night, I replayed Mark's words in my head. You are not the woman I married. He was right. I was not. I had become someone unrecognizable, someone who valued lust over loyalty, secrecy over honesty, betrayal over love. And in the end, I was left with nothing. This is the story of how I destroyed my marriage, my dignity, and myself, by cheating on my husband with his best friend. There is no redemption here. No forgiveness. Only the cold truth that actions have consequences, and betrayal destroys more than trust. It destroys lives.